Well, hey, and welcome back to GCC Youth Online. In this episode, we're going to take some time to revisit some of your favorite in-person messages and share them with you again here. We'll be doing this over the next few weeks, and we're calling this GCC Youth Rewind. For this episode of Rewind, we're looking back at a series we did called Q&A, where we ask questions that we have about ourselves, about life, about God and faith, and just about anything else we could think of. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the top questions that you had and that you submitted at that time. And I believe they're still relevant to you now. And so we're going to answer them from a biblical perspective. So let's get started. Okay, question one. First question was, how do I balance sports and my relationship with God? Great question. And this one can be a hard one to answer sometimes. Now, something that makes this question difficult is the season of life we're all in right now. There really isn't organized sports going on, and even though a few of you might be continuing to exercise and try to keep your training up, it's just not the same. But I do think that this is a great time to reflect on the meaning of sports and God in your life before you step back into it, whenever that might be. Okay, so imagine you have a set of scales, God on one side and sports on the other. So the question is, how do I balance sports and my relationship with God? Let's look at a few ways to answer this one. The first thing we need to understand is this. We give the most time, we give the most attention, the most investment of our lives into the things that matter to us the most, the things that we see as most important to us. And that's actually a biblical principle. In Matthew 6:21, Jesus says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So wherever you put all your time, your energy, your thoughts, your desires, and your focus, that's where your heart will be also. We all have things that are important to us, that we give the most attention and time to. And having things that are important to us isn't a sin. But whenever things tie you to this earth so much that you lose focus on your relationship with God, that's when you should probably reevaluate where your attention is and where your heart is. So here's a question. What is more important, your relationship with God or being an athlete? If you say that the most important thing to you is being an athlete, then that will most likely dictate how you live your life. And all that you do will have an emphasis and focus on putting forth the effort in being an athlete. And if you say the most important thing is your relationship with God, then everything you do should put God at the center. He should lead your life. Here's another question. Do you live your life through the filter of being an athlete, or do you live your life through the filter of who God says you are? Now you might have the question, can I have a relationship with God and still play sports? Well, of course you can. Many of you do, and you know people who do. And there are many professional athletes who do the same. But I think this question, or at least the way it's being asked, is almost assuming it's either got to be one way or the other, like it's either God or sports. Like you'd have to give one of them up and miss out on the other. So what do you do? So back to the original question. How do I balance sports and my relationship with God? Okay, what about this? And I'm just trying to help you think through it. What if you asked yourself this question in order to answer that question? If my relationship with God is the most important thing, can my athletic life and my relationship with God be in harmony with one another? Because I think that is possible. But here's where it starts. It starts with your identity. And I love one of the definitions of identity when you look it up. It's serving to establish who the holder, owner, or wearer is by bearing their name and often other details. So tell me, whose name do you bear? Do you bear the name of baseball, football? Do you bear the name of cheerleading, basketball, soccer? Or do you bear the name of Christ, no matter what you do or play? Is your identity and self-worth wrapped up in the sport, in being an athlete, or is it in who God says you are, no matter how good you are at sports? Now, don't get me wrong. I think sports are great. They're fun to watch. It's fun to play a sport. I actually played baseball in high school, really liked it. And there isn't anything inherently wrong with sports. But where we can get it wrong so easily is when sports, or being an athlete, or anything really, becomes an idol. Look around and you'll see so many people who have allowed their athletic performance to become their idol, sort of. And not just that, you'll see that they've elevated themselves at times to the place of the idol. So whenever you're good at something and you know it, and then you elevate yourself and everything around your athleticism to be about you, and that's all you think about, that's when things get dicey and get dangerous. So many athletes think it's about them. And yes, they do a lot of the effort. But where do you think that came from? Who gave them the ability to play? And so what that does is it takes God away from the equation and then puts you on this throne of you and your talents, the throne of your abilities. And so anytime we do this, it places God aside. Now, what I'm not saying is that you can't celebrate or be proud of your accomplishments and the skills you have. In fact, I think you should. But the talents you have, use them to point others back to God. Use them to glorify the one who gave them to you in the first place. He gave them, He can take them away, right? And the thing is, we can be tempted to think about our gifts, and that's any kind of gift that we might have, as really just kind of there for us as a part of who we are. Those become our identity. But instead, we should think about those gifts as a part of how good God is. He gave them to us. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, "So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God." So whether you eat or drink or play sports or watch sports or you're an artist or you work in a drive-thru, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Okay, this next part is critical that you understand. The light of the gospel should not be kept out of any part of society. It should be occupying all the areas of society, social, political, personal, and that includes sports. And so, whenever we lose sight of who we serve, that's when we lose the balance of whatever we're doing and then jeopardize our growth in God and the power of our witness. Colossians 3:23 and 24 says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as you're working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving." It's only whenever whatever it is that you're doing is in harmony with your relationship with God that it works. So put Him first, and all the other stuff will fall into place, including the desires of your heart, including your athletic abilities, and that goes for any achievements and aspirations you might have as well. So maybe you're struggling in this area and you want to talk to somebody, but we want to help you. We are here for you, and so we want to help you navigate this area of your life. And you can reach out to us anytime. Send us a message, DM us on Instagram at GCC Youth Lebanon. And no matter what goes on, and there's a lot happening in our world right now, but no matter what happens, make sure you're relying on the only one who can give you the power to overcome, the power to love authentically, and will give you peace through it all. Now, I can't wait till we can meet again. But until then, stay fixed on Jesus' words and draw on His supply of power, on His strength and His peace during this time of your life. I'll see you soon.